Hi friends, welcome to the channel. Hit the like and subscribe, and don't forget to comment with an emoji just for the sake of engagement.
Chapter 50. Upon seeing the bright light emanating from the sky, Callus entered the terrace and saw that Lena was no longer there and the moon was shining brightly. Syria looked at the moon and wondered if Lena went to the moon like she was supposed to in the novel. Callus from behind shouted Syria's name and asked her whether she just pushed Lena off the ledge. The statement shocked both Syria and the servant who was following Callus. With a heavy heart, Syria asked him whether he intended to really hurt her till the very end. At that very moment, Lena could be seen coming towards them from the direction of the moon as yellow wisps of light surrounded her. Upon seeing that, Callus called out her name, and Syria cemented her prediction. In the story, Lena passed back and forth between her world and this world several times, but she wasn't expecting the first time to happen tonight. Upon opening her eyes, Lena screamed Callus's name and hugged him while sobbing. Callus asked her if she was alright, and also asked her what happened with her just now. Lena could only mutter the words, "No, not yet." She begged him by screaming to help her and save her. Callus requested her to calm down, but Syria was wondering why Lena said the words "not yet." She thought to herself that the second time this event took place, she would disappear from the world for the third. However, as that had nothing to do with her, she decided to leave the terrace, wondering why she never thought Callus would suspect her of being a murderer. Holding Lena in his arms, he apologized to Syria but got a disgusted expression from her in return. While leaving, she thought that ever since she came to possess the body of the villain, she had done everything in her power to survive. It hadn't been easy trying to save a reputation that had hit rock bottom even if she couldn't undo all the past evils. Callus must have seen all the good deeds she had been doing to make up for it. She was thrilled when he proposed to her. She felt like all her hard work was paying off. Even though he ended up choosing Lena and brought her to the brink of death, she never would have suspected all that hard work that she had been doing for the past year to vanish in an instant. The man who was just clinging onto her, telling her he loved her, said something like suggesting she push Lena off the edge. Just the fact that Lena disappeared made him suspicious of her. She thought all her efforts were for nothing. At that very moment, the Duke came to where she was sitting. Upon seeing him, she smiled and said that she always seemed to let him see her in that state of despair. He crouched down to her level and told her that just like he always seemed to find her in that state. Syria asked the Duke whether he heard everything, to which he stated that they all were speaking very loudly. He reached for her and brushed her cheeks and told her that she seemed on the verge of tears. Ducking her head, she told him that she indeed felt like crying a bit. The next morning, Syria and Lenin could be seen talking to each other. He informed her that the high priest took Lena away too. Syria thought even though the high priest could be stern, he was not the type to get angry. Syria asked Lenin whether he came to her chambers this early to discuss that matter. Lenin, getting startled, informed her that he didn't think that the Duke had broached the subject with her, to which Syria wondered what he was talking about. Lenin asked Syria whether she had heard of the Laurel Manor. Their conversation was interrupted when someone knocked on the doors, and Callus entered her chambers. He begged her to give him a moment of time before she left. Lenin asked if he was invisible to the Marquis. Callus replied that whether Lenin stayed or left was his own affair. He knelt down in front of Syria and apologized for the way he behaved yesterday and asked her to give him a chance. Angrily, Syria stated that it wouldn't make a difference to her if they started over. She asked him if he was certain that he wouldn't go to Lena if she called for him again. She stated that he would run back to her side the moment she called his name. She also remarked on his previous accusation and told him that the servant present there didn't even jump to that conclusion. He was the first person to question her innocence. But she understood why, as her reputation was formidable, and he nearly lost his arm because of her. She told him that he had hurt her too deeply, and now she didn't want to live like she did before, continuing to worry whether he'd run off to Lena. With that, she took the ring that Callus gave her when proposing and returned it back to him, asking him to end all things between them once and for all. While leaving the room, she asked Lenin to follow her and continue the conversation they were having somewhere else. Callus could be seen crying, sitting on the floor and asking for forgiveness. Chapter 16. The next day, Syria was seen walking with Lenin in the courtyard, asking him if he was going to tell her what he was planning to say the day before. Lenin asked whether it would be okay, as he felt it was rather sensitive to bother someone who parted ways with another recently. He claimed that she must be exhausted from all the sobbing. Syria told him that she didn't cry and was just letting go of some pent-up feelings. She curiously asked him what he was wanting to tell her. As he started informing her about the matter, Syria noticed Abigail and ran towards her. She hugged her and claimed that she had been through so much, to which the knight disapproved. Syria gave Abigail the thickest cloak she ever owned and asked her if the dungeons were too cold. She asked her to come to the kitchen for some warm stew. Abigail replied that it wasn't as cold as the time she was immersed in icy waters for 3 days. Abigail asked Syria if she had killed the man or woman while she was detained, while wondering if she killed them both. Syria told her that she did neither, as doing so would sentence her to death. Abigail quickly asked her if she could do it for her. Sir Eliot interjected that conversation by saying that there were many years present here. Lennon, feeling left out, cried that he wanted to speak, which brought Syria's attention back to him. He said that he needed to convey something very important to her ladyship. Within the Burke estate, there was a place that was quite famous in certain circles. He was referring to Laurel Manor. He told her that she was to accompany the Duke there tomorrow. Syria remembered that Laurel Manor was a place where only immediate members of the family were permitted to stay and was only mentioned in the novel a few times. It was described as a place that had faded into obscurity. She questioned him if she was supposed to go there tomorrow. Lennon asked her if she had any other plans. Upon hearing her answer, he happily claimed that he was relieved to be able to inform her, as the Duke kept missing his chance to tell her. At any rate, she was informed to prepare thoroughly. The next scene showed the next day, where we saw 2 carriages followed by a bunch of knights going through a winding path in between a forest covered with snow. Syria was flustered upon seeing her condition, and she wondered what was happening to her. She was seen all bundled up on the lap of the Duke, still wearing a nightgown and with the blanket wrapped around her body. She wondered why no one told her about the way they would be going to the manor. The Duke, seeing her awake, told her to go back to sleep as they still had a long way to travel. Syria thought to herself that she wouldn't be able to sleep in this position. We were taken back an hour where we saw the Duke telling the knights that they must set off before the blizzard worsened. Looking for Syria but finding her peacefully sleeping, the servant asked him if she should wake her up, but the Duke told her that it wasn't necessary as she was sleeping comfortably for the first time in a long while. He picked her up in his arms and departed in that way. Syria begged the Duke to let her go so she could move to the other side, but the Duke claimed that she was not wearing any shoes as there wasn't time to get her slippers. He told her that there would be a pair in her luggage and asked her to sleep for now. Syria questioned the Duke about whether he would be able to sleep in such a state. Misunderstanding her words, he stated that the carriage was indeed cold and placed her feet on his palm to warm them up. Syria begged him not to touch her feet, as he normally did not touch other people's feet, to which the Duke replied that she was hardly other people to him. Suddenly being shy, she asked the Duke if they were going to the Laurel Manor for their bridal night. The Duke grinned and told her that indeed they would be having their bridal night over there. Seeing his expression, Syria asked if he was lying. When the Duke asked her how she knew, she told him that she could read his face very well. Lifting her closer to him, he told her that he was only holding them because they looked cold and there weren't many ways to warm them in a carriage. She told him to let go as his Archduchess was declining his kind offer. But soon changed the narrative to her being astern. The Duke asked her why she changed the narrative, and pulling her closer to him, he let go of her feet, claiming that she was his Duchess after all. If the Duchess was opposed, the Duke was powerless to contradict her. At that very moment the carriage halted with a jerk, and screams and shouts could be heard claiming monsters had appeared. Chapter 17. The knights could be seen battling with the monsters. The Duke asked Sir Eliot about the location of their carriage, and he replied that it was directly in front of the manor. With caution, the Duke asked whether everyone was wearing their astral armor. He gently placed Syria down in the seat and told her that he was relieved to have a stern among them. He asked her to remain inside the carriage, and he would send Lennon to her for company. While he was leaving, Syria reached for his cloak, gently squeezing it, and reminded him not to get hurt. Looking out from the window of the carriage, she wondered why this weather was so terrible. The noise of metal armor and swords could be heard around the carriage, and the knights could be seen trying to fight all the monsters. Syria, sitting in the carriage, wondered why the monsters had appeared. Was it because she hadn't visited the glacier recently? But it had only been a few days. Her thought was broken when Lennon entered the carriage, shivering from the cold. Looking at his condition, Syria asked whether he had been riding on horseback. To which he stated that he had been perched on the luggage carrier. She innocently asked why he didn't ride with them, and thinking about the Duke, he answered that since they left in a hurry, there were some things he needed to check. He asked Syria if she was aware that they would be arriving shortly, and he advised her that once they entered the gates, she must not speak deferentially about anyone other than His Grace. Failure to do so would result in their deaths. He mentioned that there were demons within. At the exact same time, a monster could be seen peeking through the window of the carriage, seeing Lenin begin shaking. Syria quickly advised that they should get out of the carriage, but it was too late as the monster grabbed hold of the carriage and started to shake it, trying to get the people out. The knights shouted that the carriage was under attack, to which the Duke spun around and saw that the monster had been successful in toppling the carriage over and was now trying to gain entry. Syria and Lenin could be seen lying on top of the glass window. Syria asked him if he was alright. Lenin answered with the same question back at her and commented that it was nearly a disaster. Syria told him that she felt a bit dizzy, perhaps from the shock, but was shocked to see demonic energy from Lenin's wound. In a swift motion, she grabbed onto Lenin and asked him to stay still, as he had been infected with demonic energy. Even though her abilities were not that powerful, she still tried to use them to cleanse the demonic energy from Lenin. A knight shouted at her to watch out, and she saw a demon coming straight at her. As it was about to reach her, the Duke leapt at the demon, and with one swift hit, he cut the demon in half, and the body fell with a thud on the ground. Reaching the carriage, he asked whether she was hurt, to which she replied that no, she was fine. Shifting his attention to the body next to Syria's, he wondered if he was dead, but a meek voice could be heard stating that he was still alive. Looking at her state, the Duke was angry and jealous. He asked her, if he hadn't died, what was the meaning of that pose? Syria answered that she was just trying to purify some demonic energy from him. Once she was finished, she let him go and, touching his face, thanked God that he was alright. Lenin thanked Lady Syria for helping him in a dire situation. The Duke could be seen angrily and gloomily assessing the current situation. The knights reported that they had taken care of all the monsters in the immediate surroundings, but it appeared that the carriage was no longer useful. Duke remarked that it seemed they would have to proceed on horseback to Syria, to which she replied that she was fine with it and was excellent with horses. The Duke asked how that information was relevant. The question perplexed Syria, but she soon understood his motives as she was carried like a silkworm wrapped up in its cocoon. The Duke replied that if she indeed were a silkworm, she would be put behind him, as he would never permit such a creature on his horse. The Duke stated that she felt as cold as ice and told her to stay still if she wished to not freeze to death, as they were traveling. Syria stated that he indeed was very. After a few moments, Syria was informed that they had reached the manor. Chapter 18. Syria was carried by the Duke in his arms through the gates of the manor, and she was shocked upon seeing the state the manor was in. It felt dreary. She felt a terrible and pleasant energy when she was outside, but the manor itself was far worse. The Duke asked what she was thinking about, but Syria quickly dismissed his concern. She stated that it felt a little different from the other castle he had. A lady could be seen coming down the stairs in front of them. She was shocked to see the Duke and Duchess in that position. Upon hearing the lady call her a duchess, she exclaimed that it was only temporary. Hearing her remarks, the lady questioned if Syria was treating her marriage like a tasting menu, and the way they entered looked like she had been kidnapped by the Duke. Reaching forward, she took hold of her hand and exclaimed that she felt cold as ice. She wanted to know how they made the journey here. Syria felt the warmth emanating from her hands, which was the total opposite of what she felt coming into this place. Lenin informed the Duke that the knights were waiting at the gates. He offered Syria to Marta as he wanted to have a word with the knights. Marta informed that the floor was too filthy and took her in her arms very easily, which shocked her. She complimented Marta on her strength and addressed her as Madam. Marta thanked Syria and asked her to call her by her name. The Duke quickly left while they were conversing, which made the situation very awkward. Marta asked Syria not to speak deferentially to her and asked her if he had been talking to Lenin that way. After a bit of an awkward situation, Marta suggested that they should get into a warm bath, as she was cold as ice. Syria informed Marta about all the adventures they had been through, and she couldn't believe that the washroom was very clean. Marta exclaimed that she thought the Duke intended to kidnap Syria and hide her. Syria answered that he was not that kind of a person. Marta replied that she might find him to be more emotional than she realized. Glancing around, she asked Marta about the washroom's conditions, stating it was a bit simple compared to the one she had seen. She was informed that the room was normally used by staff and the other rooms were inaccessible at this moment. Syria questioned if there were others beside her in the palace and was informed that the gardener and butler were also present here apart from her. Syria thought that the manor was not being maintained as it was vacant and questioned the reason for it being neglected like that. In the next scene, we could see Mr. Bastian and Lennon talking. Lennon stated that Laurel Manor was just as it was before. The butler stated that yes, it had remained the same ever since that day. Lennon asked Mr. Bastian if he didn't find it uncomfortable living in this place. Everyone always talked about how the house's butler never visited the main castle. He replied that it was nothing new, as he had spent more than 10 years here. The main castle didn't often receive guests anyway. He asked Lennon if the Duchess was the same person whom Lennon described as being cruel and arrogant 2 years ago. Lennon whispered and begged him to never reveal the past comments about her, as currently they were on excellent terms, and he couldn't let anything jeopardize that. The butler gave him his word but wondered how much a person could possibly change to completely transform his opinion. Syria, upon reaching near them, asked about who they were talking about, which scared Lennon, and he hurriedly made her sit at the table and asked a variety of questions, trying to divert her attention. The butler introduced himself and told her that it was an honor to know her in person. He also requested that she call him by his name. She remembered that she had not seen a butler in the main castle and told him that it was a pleasure to meet him. He informed that the other servants were busy at the moment and apologized on behalf of them for their late greeting. He went to bring her meal, informing her to enjoy her time with Lennon in the meantime. Syria saw the same black mold on the walls and, upon closer inspection, saw it moving. She figured that it might be solidified demonic energy. She remembered that it might be demonic shadows. That's what Lena ended up calling the masses. It played a significant part in the events in the later half of the story as she gained influence over the imperial family once she managed to successfully purify the bizarre shadows. But the ones she purified were in the imperial palace, not here. She wondered if she was the only person who could deal with these masses. When Lennon saw Syria looking at the molds, he asked whether she had heard about them from the Duke. He stated that it might cause her some discomfort, but with no other option, the Duke was forced to call them to the manor. Chapter 19. When Syria asked what Lennon was talking about, she mentioned that with no other option, the Duke was forced to call upon the sorcerers from the kingdom of Nissus. The manor had been infested with black mold, which had been an issue for the past 15 years. Many attempts had been made to eradicate the problem, but there was no solution in sight. Syria asked whether it was alright for her to hear all those details, as the High Church did not believe in them and thought of them as heretics. Lennon stated that the Duke would generously recompense her for her silence. She questioned whether it would have been easier to not bring her here in the first place. He told her that it was because the Duke wanted her to meet Miss Marta, as she had more or less raised him when he was young. Syria stated that it would have been better if they had come after the sorcerers had left, but Lennon informed her that it would be the final attempt to cleanse this place. The Duke could be seen walking outside the manor, talking to his knights about the monsters. The knights asked him about the sorcerers, and the Duke informed them that their journey was delayed due to the snow, and would be here the day after. He asked them not to worry and to take the knights back to the main castle. He promised that this time they would definitely save her. Marta took Syria to a well-decorated room and asked her to sleep here for the night as her own room was not yet ready. She stated that it would have been better if they had been informed about their arrival, to which Syria told her that the room was perfectly fine. She took hold of Syria's hand and advised her not to speak so deferentially to everyone once they left this place. Syria promised her that she would definitely do that. Marta held her and praised her for being charming, but she was sad that it was only for a few days. She told her that she was honored to serve Syria. Syria wondered what Marta meant by a few days. She remembered that Lennon earlier stated that the mold had eaten away at the manor and wouldn't be able to withstand much more. She had asked Lennon why they couldn't evacuate everyone to the main castle, to which he stated that she would soon find out. She wondered why none of that was mentioned in the novel, so she had no idea what was going on. While leaving the room, Marta stated that the Duke might be a bit late and asked her to retire first. Syria asked where the Duke would be sleeping this evening. Closing the curtains, she answered that he would indeed be sleeping here as the room was his bedchamber. She got giddy as she realized that she had forgotten to tell her that piece of information. As she was leaving the room, the Duke returned. He asked about Syria, and Marta informed him that she was fast asleep as she was quite exhausted. Marta asked the Duke whether she was really the Stern. The butler stated that she was completely different from the person Lenin had described previously. The Duke replied positively to the question. He was leaving but stopped when they asked if she had undergone anything significant. The Duke replied that she was that way because she fell in love with a fool. He told them that he would also retire for the night and left. When he entered his room, he paused, seeing Syria sleeping there, and blamed Marta for not mentioning anything. But she began wondering why she was sleeping on the sofa instead of the bed. Gently placing her on the bed, he wished she had done that herself from the beginning. Noticing the temperature, he quickly lit up the fireplace, slouched back down on the armchair, and thought she was really a lot to deal with. He wondered if she was still cold as the room was a bit chilly. He went up to the bed and gently covered her with a blanket and began thinking of the times Syria asked him whether they were traveling for their wedding night. As he was about to leave the bed, Syria's hand grabbed hold of his 12-pack abs, and he was trapped. Chapter 20. In the morning when Syria woke up, she wondered what was so warm that she was touching. She began squeezing Daddy's tits and wondered what was so squishy. Suddenly, as she realized the situation, she woke up with panic on her face. And both of them were sleeping together, hugging tightly. She wondered why the Duke was cradling her in his sleep. She wriggled out of his grip and covered him with her back. Upon seeing his face in the early morning sun, she agreed that he was really very handsome. She wondered how his proportions could be so perfect and guessed the male leads were in a league of their own. Thought it would have been nice if he had been a bit kinder. The Duke opened his eyes as she was leaning close to his face. As soon as she realized the Duke was looking at her face, she wished him a pleasant morning and decided to leave. The Duke questioned if she was just going to leave after gawking at his face like that. She replied that she was not gawking at his face and was just pulling up the blanket. She asked whether Marta carried her to the bed last night, but the Duke replied that no, it was him that did it. When asked why, he questioned her if he should have let his wife sleep on the sofa while he took the bed. He also stated that she was sleeping scrunched up in the first place. He understood that she did that out of the fear that he might do something to her, but she was the one who clung onto his body because she was so cold. Syria begged him not to distort the truth, but he told her that it was the truth. The next scene showed the Duke and Syria having breakfast in the dining room, and the servants took their leave to give them some privacy. Syria told the Duke that she heard about the sorcerers, so should she be at her rooms, he informed her that she could do whatever she wanted as they should be avoiding her. She assured him that she would never tell on him to the high church and was thanked for her generosity. She told the Duke that she was curious about something, about the place, as the conditions here couldn't be considered as ordinary. She asked why he insisted Marta and Bastian stay here. He replied that he had never asked them to stay here. He stated that they were bound to this place and were unable to step outside its walls because of a curse. To be clear, Marta was the only one who was bound to the house. The others chose to remain by her side, as they were fond of this place. But the Duke knew that it was a lie. It was said that Marta was bound to this manor, which could no longer withstand the encroachment of the demonic shadows, which meant if the structure were to fall into ruins, she would die. Syria questioned if that was the reason why the sorcerers were called on to help free her. The Duke answered that this wasn't the first time he had done so, as it was all because of him. Syria could be seen walking along the snowpark with Lenin by her side. He informed her that the Duke left to check the borders as it was the sensible thing to do given how many monsters had already been reported, but he asked her not to worry as the Duke was extremely fastidious. He told her that it seemed she still didn't know him that well, as he was some sort of extraordinary individual who would return alive even if he were left in the middle of a desert. Syria asked Lenin if he could tell her exactly what happened here. He agreed to tell her but told her that he would be concise as the story was very long. It occurred back then when the Duke was 15 years old. His father, the previous Duke, brought his legitimate son to the manor. The two of them wished to get rid of his grace from his position as heir to the duchy. The late Duke was always finding fault in everything his son did and had taken to threatening Sir Elliot, the only knight at the time, using the emerald sea chest. The chest was an heirloom of the Burke family and was used by seasoned, honor-seeking knights wishing to become the guardians of the manor. Those who placed a lock of hair within it could no longer leave the manor. The Duke continued to press Sir Elliot, demanding to know why he was refusing to place his own hair inside the chest if he truly desired to become the guardian of the House of Burke. In the end, Miss Marta used her own hair inside the chest to prevent His Grace's only knight from being forever bound to this place. Since then, she had been unable to leave this place. And those close to her decided to stay by her side. Syria wondered why on earth the Duke's father would do such a thing and why nothing was mentioned in the book. Lennon asked Syria to not be upset with the Duke, as he believed he only wanted her to meet Marta. Syria replied that she wasn't offended. In fact, she was grateful that he shared such an account with an outsider like her. Lennon, crying, remarked that she wasn't an outsider anymore, and once their union received the imperial family's blessing, she would become the one closest to His Grace. He awaited the day when he would be able to officially address her as the Archduchess. Syria wondered to herself that there must be a way to save the manor and the people who called it their home. Chapter 21. Back in Laurel Manor, Syria was seen trying to clean and clear the demonic shadows. Even though her power was not that great, she could still use it to purify them. But at this rate, it would probably take her 1,000 years to get rid of everything. In the story, Lena was able to locate the source of the demonic energy and purge it using her powers as a saint, which meant there must be a place like that here as well. She was interrupted by the butler, who brought Suzette. Suzette was the seamstress and gardener at Laurel Manor. She greeted Syria and forwarded her apologies for being late. Syria introduced herself and told her that it was a pleasure to meet her. The butler requested her presence at the dining hall as they had prepared some things for her that might be to her liking, which was a pleasant surprise for Syria. When she reached the dining hall, she was overwhelmed by all the sweets that had been prepared for her. Marta told her that they had specially made it for her, as no one else in the manor would eat such things. They were perplexed when the Duke unexpectedly arrived with so many desserts this year. But she understood that Syria was fond of sweets, so they must be for her. Upon hearing that statement, Syria was confused. Hesitantly, she reached for a sweet dish and told them that she didn't dislike them but didn't enjoy them enough to eat that many. Both the butler and Marta were shocked upon hearing her statement, as she clearly remembered the Duke confirming her question about whether Syria liked sweets. Syria was perplexed and didn't know why the Duke would say such a thing. She suddenly remembered that Marta was the only one who could not leave, even though the other members claimed to be fond of this place and said that they wished to remain here. She asked Bastian what the excuse was that he gave when he told the Duke that he liked staying here and did not wish to leave. Bastian remembered that there was a peculiar boulder on the estate that was composed entirely of a special kind of sugar. He told Rush that after sampling the sugar taken from that rock, the other flavorings no longer suited his palate, although the Duke did not believe him. Picking up a plate of sweets in front of her, she stated that perhaps this was his way of showing them that a number of sweets existed beyond these walls, and that the time had come for him to venture out or move on. Even though he knew your words were nothing but a lie meant to ease his mind. Hearing her words, both of them were just shocked, as they had no idea this gesture held such meaning. Marta stated that His Grace was still that young boy they once knew, that young kind boy. Syria realized that the Rush really cared a great deal for these people, although it didn't concern her. For some unknown reason her heart ached for them. After leaving the dining hall, she thought that it was finally time to admit that somehow she had also become attached to this place. Ever since she possessed Syria, she had struggled each and every day to survive. She hadn't had a chance to relax like this in a long time and had grown fond of the spacious and serene manor. Even though this was where the Duke grew up, it was never described in detail in the story. None of the action took place here, and Lena never visited this place. It was a place that seemed to have disappeared before it was even mentioned, so it should be alright for her to claim this place as her own. At the very least, she could be sure that Laurel Manor would never leave her for Lena the way Callus did. With urgency in her step, she thought that she needed to first find a source of the demonic energy and that there must be a way to eliminate it. A few hours later, as the sky was filled with a salmon hue, Syria was standing near the entrance to the gloomy basement with a nervous look on her face. She thought that this must be the place, as the demonic energy definitely felt stronger in this direction, but the sorcerers from Nissus had just arrived and made their way to the cellar. Marta told her that they would do their best to stay out of her way. She was thinking that this wasn't the best time when suddenly, oh my god, what were you doing? Lennon, lol, when suddenly a hand clasped her shoulder from behind, and in a creepy voice, Lennon asked Syria what she was doing here. Syria, being scared, screamed and then quickly gained composure, asking Lennon what he was doing as he startled her. Realizing his mistake, he quickly apologized to her but was not able to complete the sentence as something happened that made him fall and hit the ground with a thud. Not understanding what happened, Syria was shocked and spun around to see Suzette standing there with a menacing look on her face.
That's all for today. See you in the next episode, friends. Until then, keep reading manga.